This is The Roadmap with Ted Jenkin.
Hey everybody, I'm Ted Jenkin and welcome to another episode of The Roadmap exclusively here on America's Small Business Network. You can always go to asbn.com to see all of the episodes that we've done of some of our amazing entrepreneurs. Every week I try to bring you the brightest and best entrepreneurs, CEOs that are running different models. It could be a startup business, a business that's growing, or one that actually has exited, and we talk about how did that business actually exit stage left. Today, I'm excited to have on my guest Seth Watson. He is the founder and CEO of the Distillery of Modern Art. If you haven't been to Atlanta, by the way, next time that you come, you have to check this out. It is super cool. Where did you come up with this idea, the Distillery of Modern Art, and what is it?
That's an awesome question, Ted. Yeah. So first of all, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I think that for me, being in hospitality for nearly 20 years prior to building this distillery, gave me a good sense of place in general in the city of Atlanta. And I found hospitality to be such an integral part of what I do, and it's pretty much all I've lived and breathed for my entire career here in Atlanta. So around 2017, I had sold a previous business where we were doing design and production for private events, lighting, staging, sound, decor, prop fabrication, set design, and furniture building. And when I was ready to exit that business, I had always had a passion for craft spirits and a love for hospitality, and I wanted to figure out a way to blend those two.
How do we put these two together?
So that was the initial piece for it. It was, can I build a venue and can we make whiskey in Atlanta? And at the time, very few distilleries existed. The ones that did were making some good whiskey, but compared to states like Kentucky or literally anywhere else across the country, there just wasn't enough of it being made. And I was destined to figure out how and why. And so then I started down the path of education.
So how did you decide, first of all, location? Because obviously you could have picked anywhere in the city of Atlanta or done it in the suburbs somewhere. Chamblee obviously has been growing like crazy as a part of Atlanta. But why did you pick that location?
I lived next door in Brookhaven and had spent so much time throughout this city in different pockets of it. I initially had gone over into the city of Atlanta proper, thought maybe downtown would be a really cool location. But then I started to really think about the saturation of the types of businesses there. And we did not want to fall into some saturated market. We wanted to go to a place where we can help that city grow and really make our mark in an area and have things grow around us. So being so close to Chamblee, traveling over there for food and drink, I realized that there was a pocket of an area that is yet to be developed that we could actually make an impact in.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And so you're part really gallery, right? You're an art gallery, and then part you're actually making alcohol as well. What is the gallery side of the business in here? Do you bring in different artists, or do you just have art that's there all the time?
A little bit of both. So for us, when we were thinking about theme and concept, what I kept figuring out throughout sort of our trials and testings and tastings with the community was that everything is subjective. Art, wildly subjective, spirit being wildly subjective. So while you may enjoy one bourbon, somebody next to you may not understand it, and big fan of modern art in general, and felt that connection, that there was a subjectivity between both. And when you really think about a spirit, you think about it from a subjective matter, that it's part art, part science. And so they started to make sense to me. And they really blended as far as a concept of, why don't we create this elevated experience that is part artistry and part science, and lean in on that.
So let's talk a little bit about this. You know, we were talking a little bit before the program started, and I love this term that you use, that we are whiskey nerds. And so what kind of products do you sell on the alcohol side? And like, what is a whiskey nerd? And some people may say, what does that even mean?
Sure, I'll give a quick brief history. So when I was in college, I was drinking beer often, just like anybody else was. Found myself sort of bored with the category and wanted to branch out. Young drinker, didn't really know any different. I started to find a couple craft whiskeys, because at the time in the late 90s, there were very few.
Yeah, very few.
Very few. And I just found that there was a huge difference between a craft spirit and some big boy that was produced. So I started to hunt for better and better whiskey. And I found as I got older, those price points kept going up. More was available, but then it became less and less obtainable for the general drinker. So I desperately wanted to find out, hey, where are all these flavors coming from? What's making a difference? Who's using what grains and why? And it just kept building my interest into creating something that was not like what you'd get on a normal shelf.
So what was the first product you created?
So I thought that I could create whiskey, which I'm not a distiller. I had partnered up with a distillery to help me run some trials. And I got very cocky and said, hey, let's try this recipe out. Based on what I was drinking, I thought I could modify a couple of those grain percentages to get somewhere. and I was really off, just flat awful. It was garbage. Dumped a lot of barrels, started to really refine what those things should taste like, and started to lean in heavier on a distiller's impression of what those things could be. And so we got to a point where we were creating something interesting. Huge bourbon fan, huge rye fan, fan of the whole category in general. So the idea was, how do we make the best possible whiskey that's both affordable and approachable to a market that you see on a secondary with whiskeys, where a bottle that should be $40 is being sold for $180, $190. That's cutting out a large percentage of your consumer base.
They can't afford that.
Can't afford it. So I was destined to make something that was both affordable and approachable.
And you said now, because it takes so long, that you're about to come out with your first flagship rye product. Why does it take that long to make a rye? Is that just part of the process?
For both bourbons and ryes, you need to mature. You need liquid in a barrel to run seasons, where the alcohol inside that barrel will expand and contrast inside that barrel, goes in clear, and then it picks up the flavor of that barrel over periods of time.
Right.
So if you just run it through one winter, one summer, you'll have a brown spirit, but you're not going to have that flavor that has happened over time. So it takes a while. And when you're in this industry, you go two different routes. Either buy aged product, change the name of it, put it in a bottle, or you start from scratch and you're patient. And so when we open, we are of course going to offer other spirits that don't require aging, vodkas, gins, Amaro, and a couple other things that allow you to at least get your feet wet while you're spending all this time making whiskey and then allowing it to age.
Seth, when you open up this business, obviously if you're making whiskey, you're making ryes and things like that, it can be a very capital intensive business. Did it cost, I don't need to know what the numbers are, but did it cost a lot of money? How did you think about what equipment to buy? And what about the space? Because you needed space for both hospitality and you needed space to actually make the product.
When I first thought about this endeavor in general, the idea was, could I offset my event space revenue with the ability to make whiskey and then shelve it for 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 years? And the immediate answer was no. So thankfully, I'd had some help to run through financial modeling to really understand what I needed to do to afford that. And then I had hit the ground running trying to raise capital, and then we had a pandemic.
Right.
And so thankfully,
what a time to raise capital.
The absolute worst time to raise capital. It really was awful. So we had some friends and family that got involved. People thought, hey, what does this guy know about spirits in general? He's coming from another industry.
Right.
So it was a huge challenge to raise any money. We were thankful that selling the last business gave us a little bit of a nest egg to get started.
Gave you some runway to get going. How do you raise capital over Zoom? How do you even do that?
Poorly. Poorly. Very poorly. Thankfully, there were folks who were more interested in my vision than sort of the reality of where it went. And they were pleasantly surprised when we were actually.
So the model on here is try to make money on event and hospitality, time for the whiskey, the ryes to age, and then eventually that becomes its own profit center.
Correct. When we built out those financial models, we did find, obviously, releasing clear spirits that don't need aging, of course, will help with revenue. We decided we were going to open a cocktail bar, because what better way to introduce a brand to somebody than to see it being distilled across the hall and then actually have it in your cocktail in that bar.
What about on the distribution side? Because obviously a lot of people that may think about getting into this business, which obviously is capital intensive and time intensive, you know, was it hard in Georgia to get distribution, and does the distributor that you have matter? And now it sounds like you're also going to be in California and Texas. How hard was it to break into those markets?
Thankfully, knowing early on that in the state of Georgia, we're in a 3-tier state, meaning manufacturer cannot sell direct to the consumer, just on the face level. No. You can sell to a distributor. The distributor then sells to bars, restaurants, liquor stores. I can't walk into a liquor store, build a relationship, and sell them alcohol. All has to go through the distributor. And in a 3-tier state like Georgia, once you're in a relationship with a distributor, it's a forever relationship.
Is that right?
So choosing that right distributor means everything.
So if you have a bad distributor, you could have the best alcohol in the world and you may hit a brick wall.
You could be at the bottom of someone's portfolio and never get distributed, which is a really tough thing. Laws slightly changed about 2017 that allowed for some small selling on site. So in our shop now, I can sell 6 bottles per person per day, but I can't sell you a case of anything else. I can't do almost anything without that distributor. So the relationship's important.
Where's the price point in general about how you price the product out?
Our vodkas sit in the $25 range. The gins and Amaro in the $34 range, and the whiskeys will sit under $50. It's very specific science when it comes to a sale of a whiskey. In our research, anything under $50 becomes an everyday bottle. Anything above becomes a gift bottle. We don't want to be that gift bottle.
So $50 is that real line in there about whether or not you're giving it to somebody for a birthday or an anniversary or whatever it may be, or you're just going to open it up and drink it at home?
I think you can always sell one bottle to somebody. It's that second bottle. It's that third bottle. Right. It's the pull. So if you're people who are conscious with their money, regardless of their net worth, so to speak, want something that they can buy all the time and not just say, I want that one bottle because it's, a gift. I want to drink this product.
So I come to the Distillery of Modern Art. What's the one product I have to try when I come see you?
I would say our Amaro Peach. Are you
Amaro
familiar
Peach.
with Amaro?
No.
So Amaro literally translates in Italian to bitter. And it is something that's been made in Europe for ages. If you go into Italy, any town, any city, any township, all have a different variety of that. But the idea of an Amaro as a digestive, it's meant to help promote digestion.
Yeah.
So the Europeans drink it all the time. They have an aperitif, they have a digestive. It is not necessarily the palate of the American culture to have such bitter principles in their drinks.
Right.
And being the state of Georgia, we were looking for a way to lean in on our palate, which is peach. So we went with a balance of bitter and sweet to create something that came together of this awesome, well-balanced after-dinner drink. And our goal is to help replace the back page of a menu for after-dinner drinks on every menu in the country.
It's very cool stuff. Continued success to you. I love seeing these stories across the country, especially here in our hometown in Atlanta. I guess that you folks, you're gonna have to go online or go to the Distillery of Modern Art and check out the Amaro Peach. See if it's something that you might be having after dinner every single night. Thanks, Seth, for joining us today. Thank you so much for watching this episode of The Roadmap. As always, exclusively here on America's Small Business Network. Go to ASBN.com. See all the great episodes of all the interviews that we do, or download us anywhere, Apple TV, Fire, whatever may be the case, to get the ASBN app. Check out all the episodes, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for watching The Roadmap with Ted Jenkins.